They say your home is your sanctuary, the one place where the world cannot hurt you. For 31 years, I believed that with every ounce of my being, until the afternoon I walked through my front door after nearly 2 weeks away. The air inside smelled completely wrong, thick with a cheap, synthetic lavender candle had never purchased, and a strange light was burning in the kitchen despite the bright afternoon sun. It is terrifying how quickly a lifetime of security can evaporate into thin air, leaving you standing as a stranger on your own hardwood floors. I am Arthur, a 66-year-old retired corporate risk analyst, and until that moment, I thought I had planned for every unexpected variable in life. I had recently undergone a grueling total knee replacement, spending 5 agonizing days in the hospital followed by nearly a week resting at my brother Frank's place up north. Frank is the kind of man who drives hours out of his way without a single complaint, a stark contrast to my son-in-law Vance, who claimed he was too swamped with work to even pick me up from the clinic. My daughter Chloe and Vance had been living under my roof for over 2 years, moving in after what they vaguely described as a difficult financial setback. I had stopped pressing for details because I loved my daughter and wanted to support her, assuming they just needed a temporary safety net to get back on their feet. My home was spacious, and since losing my beloved wife Clara 20 years ago, the silence here had often been too heavy to bear alone. I thought having family around would bring life back into these old walls. The true betrayal was waiting for me at the end of the hallway, right outside the door of my private study. That room was my sacred space, filled with Clara's favorite green armchair, my late grandfather's mahogany desk, and the framed photograph of our summer trip to the mountains. The door was completely immovable, sealed shut with a heavy, industrial deadbolt that had been hastily installed at eye level. Someone had systematically locked me out of my own memories, treating my personal sanctuary like a piece of conquered territory. I found Vance hiding downstairs in the basement, completely absorbed in a movie on his laptop with his wireless headphones firmly over his ears. When I stepped directly into his line of sight, he looked up with a casual indifference that chilled me to the bone, offering a hollow greeting instead of asking about my recovery. When I demanded to know why my office was locked, he calmly explained that his mother Evelyn needed a place to stay, so they had simply packed up my things and moved them into the dark storage room. A profound, icy clarity washed over me as I stood there listening to his flimsy excuses. This was not a sudden emergency. This was a calculated ambush executed while I was helpless in a hospital bed, recovering from major surgery. I walked back upstairs to the kitchen, my artificial joint throbbing with a dull ache, and looked out at the maple tree I had planted when Chloe was just a child. I realized that the people I loved had looked at my vulnerability and seen a perfect window of opportunity. When Chloe finally came home from her shift at the dental clinic, she could not even meet my eyes as she sat across from me at the table. She confessed that Evelyn's landlord had sold her building, and rather than consulting me, they decided it was better to surprise me once the arrangement was already a finished reality. Her justification that she did not want to worry me during my recovery was a transparent lie, a fragile shield to hide the fact that they had completely violated my trust. That night, sleep refused to come as I lay awake staring at the ceiling for hours. I have spent my entire professional career realizing patterns of deception and risk, and the timing of this entire operation was far too precise to be accidental. They knew my exact surgical schedule months in advance, meaning they had planned this invasion down to the very day. I realized with absolute certainty that if you do not draw a hard line with people who manipulate you, they will eventually erase your boundaries entirely. The next morning brought a fresh wave of disrespect when Evelyn descended the stairs in her bathrobe, casually brewing a cup of coffee using my expensive roast as if she owned the property. When she smiled and complimented my beautiful house, I quietly informed her that I was the sole owner on the deed and I expected a specific moving timeline by the weekend. Her smile vanished instantly, revealing the sharp, opportunistic glare of a woman who realized her easy ride was about to come to a sudden end. Things grew even darker when I inspected the modifications Vance had made to my study door, discovering he had merely replaced the deadbolt with an interior latch to maintain their unauthorized occupation. In the damp storage room, I found my late wife's precious belongings stacked carelessly on top of a chest freezer, with our favorite anniversary photograph tossed face down on a cardboard box. Seeing Clara's memory treated like absolute garbage tore something open inside my chest, replacing my grief with absolute resolve. I immediately contacted my longtime estate attorney, a no-nonsense woman who gave me the exact legal framework required to remove unauthorized occupants safely and permanently. Next, I called an old contact from my risk assessment days to quietly investigate Vance's employment history at his previous logistics firm. The truth was devastating. My son-in-law had not been laid off to corporate downsizing as Chloe had claimed, but had been terminated for systematically embezzling thousands of dollars from a company fuel account. That evening, I confronted Chloe beneath the shade of the backyard maple tree, asking her directly about the real reason Vance lost his position. The exhaustion on her face turned to pure shame as she finally admitted to the mountain of debt they had been hiding from me for years. Even the emergency money had previously loaned her for dental work had been funneled directly into covering up Vance's tracks. She wept bitterly when I told her that all three of them had exactly 60 days to vacate my property. Vance received his legal notice the following morning over a cold cup of coffee, and with his secrets laid bare, he lacked the courage to even argue. Evelyn packed her suitcases and departed 2 weeks later with a friend, refusing to say a single word to me on her way out the door. It took months of painful logistics and uncomfortable silence, but I watched them carry the final boxes out of my driveway, closing a dark chapter that had nearly cost me my sanity. Today, the house belongs to me once again, and my office has been restored to the exact way Clara would have wanted it. Chloe and I are slowly attempting to rebuild our fractured relationship, meeting once a month at a quiet restaurant downtown to speak on neutral territory. Vance is entirely gone from her life now, a predictable consequence of a marriage built on a foundation of lies and entitlement. I wrote off the stolen money long ago, but I altered my will to ensure my daughter understands the true value of a second chance. Some mornings, I sit at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee and simply watch the wind move through the leaves of the old backyard maple. I survived the betrayal, preserved my heritage, and proved that it is entirely possible to reclaim your life from the people who try to take it from you. You can absolutely protect your boundaries and your peace of mind, not without facing an immense emotional cost, but with your head held high and your dignity completely intact.